It's Bullseye. I'm Jesse Thorn. If you're a fan of Gillian Jacobs, it's probably because of her TV work. For 6 years, she starred on the smash hit NBC sitcom Community. She played Britta. She also played Mimi Rose on HBO's Girls, and on Netflix's Love, which just wrapped up its third and final season, she starred as Mickey. But now, for basically the first time in her career, she's becoming more of a film actor. You can see her in Life of the Party, the new Melissa McCarthy movie, and later this month on Netflix, she'll star in Ibiza. In Ibiza, Gillian plays Harper, a quiet New Yorker in her early 30s who works at a PR company. Her life changes when she gets sent on an important work trip to Barcelona, Spain. And against her better judgment, Harper brings along her two party animal friends, Nikki, played by Vanessa Bayer, and Leah, played by Phoebe Robinson. As you might have guessed, things don't go as planned. The three party all night in Ibiza, hundreds of miles away from where she's supposed to be. And in this scene we're about to hear, Gillian's character calls her boss, played by Michaela Watkins, to check in.
Harper?
Hi there, Sarah. How are you?
It's been over 24 hours since you've checked in. Where the are you?
I'm actually leaving a meeting right now. I've been looking for new clients and...
Lying to me. So you do me a favor. You take those out of your ear and stick them back into your mouth so you can listen to what I'm saying, because I got some I gotta throw at your face right now. This little dinner meeting tomorrow, it is a breakfast meeting, okay? 11 a.m.
Tomorrow morning.
Yeah, so take a tub of concealer and shove it under your eyes and take a package of and shove it up your because you need to go there looking and smelling fresh. You got it?
You know, I think probably a dinner meeting is better. I'm really trying to set the scene with this pitch, and it hinges on an evening atmosphere. It's got to be at night.
Listen, little hipster Barbie, you need to close this deal.
Gillian Jacobs, welcome back to Bullseye. It's nice to see you.
Thank you so much for having me again.
I kind of get the impression that your character in Ibiza?
Yeah.
Ibiza?
Ibiza. Well, we say Ibiza because we're
Americans,
but it's Ibiza.
Okay. Please don't email me, America.
We know that it should be Ibiza.
Okay. Your character in this film
Good.
goes through an emotional journey that is one that I imagine you relating to. And I wonder if my imagination is off base there.
Not at all.
Because like your character in this movie is a real square do-gooder people pleaser.
Correct.
And I know that maybe is something like what you are like in real life.
I'm finally playing a character that's close to me. Yes, that's very much me.
How has that affected your life?
Well, probably like the character of Harper in the movie, I've missed out on a lot of like fun, wild nights. I've spent them at home. Being the first one to leave every party and event. I don't know. I've probably missed out on a lot of fun, but I've also, I don't know, maybe, tried to work really hard and be dedicated to my job. And so maybe that's benefited me. But I definitely think that I missed out on like the wild college and 20s that a lot of people have. I don't have those memories.
What kind of memories do you have? Are they all sitting at home and...
They're mostly sitting at home. Yes, being like, oh, I should really go now because I have to wake up early tomorrow, and being the only one to leave. So yes, like being the designated driver and always being concerned about how many hours of sleep I'm going to get.
To what extent do you think that behavior is about being responsible, and to what extent do you think that behavior for you is about being, scared of what might happen?
As the listeners can't see, but I have twisted myself into a pretzel.
That's literally true. You have double crossed your legs.
I think it's both, with the latter being probably a large portion of it. Yes, I'm very concerned about potential bad consequences if I ever allow myself to have fun. I think I've convinced myself that probably my life would be over if I ever had fun. But I know it about myself. That's progress.
I mean, I know for me, like I now am married and have 3 children, and that really determines the course of my life almost completely.
Mm-hmm.
And so I can kind of blame my behavior in that way on that. Like I can just be like, well, I can't go do something. Mm-hmm. I have 3 children to take care of.
Yes.
Or whatever. But then I realized I did not have children until I was 31. Mm-hmm. So that leaves 15 post-adolescent years in which I also didn't do anything.
Yes.
And like that I had no excuse then for being such a boring, hardworking person.
Well, you and I are both very passionate about what we do for a living.
Uh-huh.
And we're in professions that really reward people working very hard for long hours. And so I think you get affirmed in that way. But yes, at a certain point, I have to stop and think about but what about my life?
I think ultimately for a lot of folks, I don't know if this is true for you, but I think for a lot of folks, you're really focused on making sure that you're steering the ship of your own life. Mm-hmm. And that leads you not to trust that if you take your hands off the wheel.
Yeah. And also that feeling that if I ever stopped working, I would never work again. So really, actually, right now is the first break I've taken in a long time. Yeah, I did a play and it closed and I'm not working right now. And it's really scary for me. But I also hit a point where I was like, I want to also live my life. And I don't know what that means for somebody who likes to go home first and doesn't drink and doesn't like to go on vacation. But I think I have to give myself a little bit of space to figure out who I am when I'm not working.
Because you were on Love, which is just coming to a close. Mm-hmm. And before that, and you went into that directly from being on Community for 6 years or something like that.
Yes.
So pretty much your whole adult life since you started working regularly, you have been under contract.
Yes. And there are so many more restrictions to being under a television contract than I ever realized. Like you have to ask permission to guest star on another show, to do a voice on an animated show, to do a play, basically anything that I've done that could in any way conflict, I've had to ask permission. And so I think when Love ended, I realized, this is the first time in 9 years where I don't have to ask anyone permission to do whatever I want to do. So far that's meant doing nothing, but it's been kind of a nice just change for my own mentality.
Are you able to do nothing?
I'm going to therapy a lot these days.
Good for you.
Thank you. Going to a lot of therapy and really working on that. I don't know that I'm great at it, but I'm trying. Luckily, I'm able to distract myself right now by doing press for these 2 movies, so I haven't had to actually think about it too hard. But if there's a day on my schedule that doesn't have meetings or, press or any kind of obligation, I get very nervous. And I'm like, are there any meetings you could set for me? So I think I need to work on.
Let's play a clip from Community, which was the sitcom that my guest Gillian Jacobs was on. She played Britta. And basically the show was set up as a study group at a community college with 6 very different, unlikely friends, a kind of classic sitcom setup. But in a way, it also was a show that was about the form and about the various forms of kind of film and television. And so in this clip, the study group at Greendale Community College is playing Dungeons and Dragons together. And we have just found out that Gillian's character is so earnest and caring, she maybe is getting carried away.
And this is a local elf tavern, but all races are welcome. Okay, it's a crowded and rowdy evening. Beleaguered gnomes hurry to and fro with glasses of mead for the thirsty elves.
Beleaguered? Why are they beleaguered?
Who cares? I find a waiter and introduce myself.
Arky barky, ark bark bark.
Why is he a pirate?
He's a gnome. He only speaks gnome.
Anybody here speak gnome?
Oh, I do. Lavernica does.
Well, this'll be painless.
Hello, my friend and brother.
How can I help you, dear madam?
Oh, please, no need for such deference. I'm no better than a gnome.
Yes, you are, madam. You are a human warrior, which is 5 species classes greater than I.
That's disgusting. Don't talk like that.
I am so sorry, madam. Please don't report me for execution.
Oh, no, I didn't mean that. Guys, we've got to do something about these gnomes.
Britta, ask the stupid gnome where we can get a Pegasus.
Did someone say Pegasus? A word I understand in every language.
I think I understand why you are invested in clarifying the ways in which you are different from your character on that show. However, that having been said, I think that one of her essential characteristics is a kind of like deep earnestness. And I think that is a positive characteristic. I think it's one of the character's most admirable characteristics. And I think it's one that you maybe share with her.
Yes.
I'll let you characterize it.
No, you're correct. And I think that's why I was cast in the part, because I didn't have any comedy experience. So on the page, probably I was a strange choice. But you're right. I think we share that. And I think, Dan Harmon and the Russo brothers saw that. And that's why they cast me as Britta.
I mean, I don't think that's even that far off from the quality that you share with Mickey, your character from Love, as well. Like Mickey is, on the surface, it was like, oh, what if I did something completely different from Britta, right? Like it's just like, oh, she smokes and drinks and does drugs all the time and is really crazy, or wild, I should say, probably. And Britta, of course, is like a real homework doer. But like the thing that they share is they both are like right there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like you can really feel it.
Oh, well, in some ways, I guess like Mickey is Britta without network standards and practices. I can see why people think those characters are cousins or sisters or somewhere related. Yes. Yeah. And I think, for Mickey, on the surface, she seems very different from me. And a lot of her behaviors are very different from mine as a person. But I think that she and I do share some fundamental things. So I realized she is sort of like, if I reach a crossroads in my life and I chose one path, she chose another. So it's sort of like a parallel universe version of me, perhaps.
Do you feel like there was a point in your life where you reached a crossroads and made a choice?
Well, mine was very young when I decided to never drink. And I was like a child when I decided that. So I put the fork really early, much earlier than I think people normally do. And so getting back to I'm very afraid of what happens if I let myself have fun, or what happens if I stop working. I think as a child I had a lot of anxiety. And so I decided to make this hard and fast decision. And that was going to be the solution to everything. And so, Mickey is a character who didn't make that decision that I made. So I think it sort of allowed me to explore what life could have been like had I not been such a control freak of a child.
Yeah, why do you think that you made that decision?
Because I had a parent who was an alcoholic, and I had a lot of fear about what would happen if I even had one drink. I was a child who had a lot of strong opinions about things, was very definite about things, and so I just made a strong, definite decision never to drink, which is like a fear-based decision. That's not coming from like an adult reasoning mind. That's coming from a scared child.
I mean, I make a lot of scared child decisions.
Yeah.
Right now.
Yeah, well, my therapist told me that anytime that I view something in a very hard and fast way, that I should examine it, because that's coming from like child-based fear place rather than an adult reasoning place. So, I think it probably applies to a lot of areas of my life beyond just the deciding never to drink, but that's a very obvious example.
What was it like for you to play a character on Love who had made such a different choice at a crossroads for you? Like, what was it like for you to... I mean, one of the things about Love, right, is that it's the most incremental of shows.
Yes.
It's a show that, happens as close to real time as any show not called 24, right?
Yes.
So, you're just right there in the thing for a few years.
Yes.
What was that like for you?
Well, I think that I had a lot of empathy for the character because I could understand sort of what the drivers were behind the behavior. But initially, I didn't understand why they cast me because on the surface, I am so different from her. And I was very concerned about all the very superficial things like looking like a smoker, like, holding a cigarette correctly. Like I never smoked weed, having to like smoke weed on camera, like not wanting to betray the character because I don't know how to do those things or I've never done them in my real life. But beyond those like very superficial things, I found it to be a really positive experience for me as a person. And it made me think about myself and people in my life in a different, more compassionate way, I feel like.
When you're an actor, like, do you do things in a scene that you then go talk to your therapist about?
Not in real time, but yeah, I think it
Well, I mean, I presume your therapist isn't on set.
that would be great. I should get that in my contract for the next one.
You're a movie star now, Gillian.
Oh my
Let's make this
God.
happen for you.
Wouldn't that be amazing if you could have your
You get
therapist on set?
You get a trailer, and the trailer has a chaise lounge in it.
Oh my God, that would
A
make the
fainting
workday so
couch?
much easier. Especially they wrote this episode with Mickey's father in it, not knowing anything about my father in real life or not realizing how closely they had written that character to my father. Certain differences, but that for one was a very eerie feeling at being at the table read. And as we're reading the episode out loud, I'm reading out loud in front of people for the first time, realizing like they've written a version of my dad without realizing it. And my dad had passed away, so he's no longer living. And, so it was kind of like having a weird last interaction with my father in some kind of strange way, even though it's television and it's another actor and I'm wearing a costume and it's not me. But I just remember it really hit me because how close he was to my dad, saying like, I love you, Dad, on the show, and realizing like I can never say that again in real life. That was, more profound than I thought it would be.
What was similar about the character and your real life father?
Well, my dad had a lot of like business schemes that never really went anywhere. Like the character on the show, he was a person, who I think struggled with substances and never really got help for it. And he was never like fully absent from my life, but we never had a really close relationship. And it was kind of like, that awkwardness that you see on the show of them being around each other and having a conversation. It was not like that easy closeness that I have with my mother, and feeling like someone who would sort of shut down whenever I tried to have a more intimate conversation with them, who just, for a lot of time in his life wasn't really interested in a lot of introspection. And so that made it very difficult to have more than a very surface relationship with him.
There's this thing I went to a lot of AA meetings as a kid because my dad was in recovery and my parents were divorced and couldn't afford babysitters.
Yeah.
And, I wasn't paying close attention, right? But in retrospect, one of the things that I recognized there is, and I think this is true for a lot of 12 steps, not just AA, right, is that this idea of a higher power and surrendering to a higher power, which, you could think of as specifically religious, but I'm not religious. Like the thing that what it's actually about is making you comfortable with not having control.
Yes.
Right? That if something else is in control, if there is a bigger force in the universe, if there is a higher power, right? I mean, you have all this, you might have all this evidence that you don't have pure agency in your life, right? Things not working out, whatever it is, right?
Yes.
Like pain, you making mistakes,
Yeah.
like good things happening that you don't feel like you did something to deserve it as well. And like that part is so hard.
Yes. And also for me, there is relief, though, in that notion. And I'm not a religious person, but I've been trying to be more open to the notion that I don't have it all figured out and I don't have all the answers, and there's relief in that for me, too, of that I don't know everything And that's perfectly all right. Yeah.
I know that your personal comedy tastes tend a little bit towards the ridiculous. Are you ever jealous of the kind of people who can just open up a fire hose when they're doing comedy?
And by that you mean like a Melissa on SNL or something like that? Yeah. I weirdly feel like I have that gear inside of myself that's not been given. It's a funny thing of like I'm a person racked with anxiety, but I feel so much less fear when I'm performing. So I have no problem being ridiculous. Yeah, it would be fun to get to do that more. But yeah, I don't feel afraid of that sort of thing, as afraid of everything else as I am.
Has that always been true? I mean, was that true when you were 14 and you were in Oklahoma?
I was not in Oklahoma, Jesse. The high school did it, but I was not cast in it. Yeah, I think that was a place I always felt kind of free in acting class and on stage. And I think I've grown as a performer, certainly, but there was something about the acting class environment, being at a theater, that made me feel safe and taken care of, and then free to be silly and weird. Yeah, it really was like my safe place as a kid.
I mean, that's an interesting way of putting it. I don't think I had ever thought of it that way, but I think one of the great appeals of being in something, and I've heard being in a movie or television program, I wouldn't know. But one of the appeals of that is that, like, the value that you are taught from the beginning is stuff like you always have to be 10 minutes early because no one can do anything unless everyone is there. Mm-hmm. You always have to support the other people on stage because we all look bad if somebody looks bad. Like, those values are things that are really immensely appealing to somebody that isn't getting that elsewhere.
Yes. I loved that I got in trouble if I was late, or if I didn't hang up my costume, or if I did the blocking incorrectly, or if I said the line incorrectly, I got a note from the stage manager. Like, the expectations were very clear for me in those ways. When I got to Juilliard, it got muddier because then it was about performance, and that's less qualitative.
I feel like the line in The Big Lebowski that my father, who is a veteran and recovering alcoholic, always related to the most was when Walter says, "This is not Nam, this is bowling, there are rules."
Yeah.
Right? Like, when there's parts of your life that are out of control, the parts of your life that have rules are so comforting.
Yes. I loved it. And also it was like far less judgmental people. You know, so there was the other half of it where they were all nicer to me than the people at my school, my Monday through Friday life. You know, I go to my Saturday acting class, and they seemed to like the things about me that other people made fun of. So it gave me space in my life to be myself.
What did people make fun of?
Well, you know, I was always one of the youngest people in my class, so I don't think I had really developed social skills. So I don't think I had like an easy time making friends because I also didn't spend a lot of time with kids. I was mainly with adults most of the time. I didn't have play dates. I didn't have like, you know, siblings. So I was mainly with adults. And so I think I liked, you know, I found things as a kid that I really liked that I don't think a lot of people at my school shared an interest in. What was I really into? Like, I really loved Cary Grant.
Well, Gillian, thank you so much for coming back on the show. It's nice to see you.
Thank you for having me.
Gillian Jacobs, folks. Ibiza comes out on Netflix Friday, May 25th. It's really fun. Really a good time movie.